I'm Andrew Henderson. This is the Nomad Capitalist Report at nomadcapitalist.com and on radio stations across the land of the free. Always pleased to welcome the great Nostradamus of our modern era, the man who has predicted so many of the modern trends successfully, so much so that he publishes the research paper, the TrendsJournal. You can get it at TrendsJournal.com. It's worth the nominal fee that he charges for all this great research. Gerald Celente is the man behind said TrendsJournal. You've seen him on the Today Show, all the way on down to here on this Nomad Capitalist Report. Gerald Celente, welcome to the show.
Good. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Are you? Have you been following this March Madness? Being outside of the United States and not watching the mainstream media, I just realized today that something had been going on in that regard. Are you following this?
You mean the basketball stuff?
Yeah.
Nah. When I was a kid, I did.
This is like what they do to keep everyone away from like focusing on all the nonsense that's going on with money printing and the market madness. This is like the great taming of the masses.
Of course, and there's really nothing new about it. I mean, look what's going on with the Cartoon News Network, or like they like to call themselves, CNN. And it's virtually every day. The headline is, did they hear that pinger from that Malaysian airplane? You know, this is a ship lost at sea. This isn't anything new. But it's every day since the plane was lost in early March. It has been the headline story and the story throughout the day.
Look, it's a tragedy. Obviously, I'm a fan of Malaysia, and it's a shame because I'm a Malaysian Airlines flyer. So perhaps for some, it's not a shame. But
but I'm just saying this is a ship lost in sea.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is a couple of hundred people. How many people died in Iraq yesterday? How many in Syria? You know, look at the atrocities going on, and this is what they're focusing on. You know, every day. Pings haven't been heard in days. You know, this is a plane that's lost. Okay, it's a tragedy, it's terrible, but let's look at some real other stuff going on. Every single day. And you know what they didn't talk about in scouring the ocean is that they found enough garbage to create a whole size of another continent. They couldn't find the lost continent of garbage, but they talk every day about an airplane. So when you talk about March Madness, this is just another element of it.
It's the modern day bread and circus, and one of the big things that is really going on right now in the land of the free that I think people are maybe I'd like to think they're standing up to it, but I'm not so sure. And that's Obamacare. You've had a lot of trends and predictions about Obamacare and the greater socialization of medicine and less medical freedom. You know, talk about what you see coming. Are people going to jump onto this sinking ship?
No, they're jumping on in very small numbers, and what's really going on has been a great consolidation because of this, of the whole profession. I mean, doctors that have been in business for years are selling out. All the companies are all merging. The same thing is happening. The hospitals are merging one after another. They can't keep up with all the paperwork and the difficulties of working with the government. So it's becoming consolidated, just like every other element of business in this country and many other Western countries. The multinationals are taking over. These huge corporations own everything. And so that's what's really the fallout of Obamacare, and the restrictions are great. The payments that you have to pay are very high, and we're facing an employment crisis in this country. You know, they just had the numbers come out last Friday, and everybody was cheering. You know, 192,000 jobs were created, and they expected 206,000, so it's pretty much on target. And then you look at the numbers of jobs, Andrew, and who got them and where they're going. You want a job as a waiter or a bartender? There was a job for you. You want a job as a home health aide? Doesn't pay much money. Matter of fact, you don't even have to pay them the minimum wage. There's a job for you. You want a temporary job? You could get one. So when you add that on, and then the cost of what it's costing for medical care, this winter was really cold in the States. I mean, it was one of the, in most of the states. And our electric bills went up 38% in 1 month. So the jobs stink. The corporations, by the way, had their best profitable year in 85 years. It was the worst year in 65 years for income in the people. And they have Obamacare and, just to make things worse. This isn't, I'm all for socialized medicine if it really, really worked. But the way they're doing it here, it stinks. And really, the whole system began to break down when they had HMOs back in the late 80s, middle 80s, when they came out with that scam that started the whole downward spiral and consolidation of healthcare into the hands of a few.
Well, I'll tell you this. I was just in Denmark. I was in Finland paying $40 for fish and chips plates, and seeing the massive expenses, and the 56% tax rates, and then the 10% social income contributions in some of these socialist miracle countries. There's no way you're going to convince me that socialized medicine would work. It sounds nice, but here's what troubles me is the United States has the worst of all worlds. You've got a country that the people who want that system, who want the big hand of government, they believe, this is a capitalist system. What you're describing is the ultimate crony capitalist system, and it was interesting. I was reading in the Financial Times yesterday on a train the fact that Nigeria just revised its GDP upwards by like 90% over the last 20 years. And people say, well, what a third world banana republic. They don't even have their numbers straight. Well, what a third world banana republic that the United States has created an environment that a few closely tied corporations can control the entire healthcare market and drive everyone's costs up.
Well, that's exactly what happened. That's why I'm saying, what's going on now isn't working. What used to work, they killed because of the what you call the capitalism that's really not.
Right.
Look, it was very clear. 4 words made it 100% clear that it's not capitalism in the United States. It happened in 2008 when the Great Recession hit. Too big to fail. There's no such thing as too big to fail in capitalism. You rise and fall on your own merits. Unless you're a member of the White Shoe Boys, one of the Wall Street gangs, the financial criminals, or the other multinational thieves, then we'll bail you out. It's the merger of state and corporate powers. It's fascism. And you can see it in all its different shades. There's no demonstrations going on in this country. They'll beat the hell out of you if you go out in the streets. There's surveillance 24/7. You don't get out of line over here. It's fascism has taken over the nation. That's all it is. And Obama's the front for fascism, as was Bush and Clinton, and Carter. Carter was the first guy that really started the whole ball rolling. The deregulation of the airline industry and breaking up the Glass-Steagall Act. That was the first part of the banking industry. There was no such thing as interstate banking in this country in my whole life as a kid, because they put these laws into place during the Great Depression following the crash of 29 so the banks wouldn't be able to steal all our dough. So it's one after another. It's fascism in the U.S. It's not capitalism. We have every 4 years in this democracy, we get to vote for one or two of the political jerks. That's freedom in America. We get a choice between one or two of the political jerks from the Bloods of the Crips, the murderers and thieves. They like to call themselves Democrats and Republicans.
You and I don't agree on all of this, but obviously, you and I, where we do agree, is that really, like I said, the United States has this system that they've laid out where The people who don't like capitalism can accuse it of being a capitalist system. It is not. It is fascism. People who love freedom can say, oh, it's a free country. It's not. But I wanted to get into something that's particularly disturbing on the medical front, and that is medical data. This is a trend that you're talking about. Not only do you get the privilege of spending a king's ransom for not even the best medical care in the world in the U.S., and I want to get to some trends on that in a moment, but now your data is being shared among all kinds of people. There's no privacy in the United States. If you don't know that, you're insane, but you think it's going to get worse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's going to get much worse here. I mean, the whole thing is going
How is
down.
medical data sharing going to get worse and even more invasive than it is now? I'd like to hear this.
Well, they're watching and looking at everything that you have no freedom. They're selling your data. Anybody could look up to see what your life is. They could also intrude in your life as well by selling. So they know what your deal is. So now they're hitting on you. And so they have an inside track on who you are, what you're doing, what you're spending, what your problems are. They're selling this stuff all over the place.
And of course, it's interesting that the people who are most aligned in the crony capitalist system, some of them are the internet gurus like Google that makes all of its money from selling people's data. Isn't that interesting that the people who are some of the newest players in the crony capitalist fascist game are the people who control the information in an era when the government is all too happy to steal any information from you it can and violate your privacy every way till Sunday?
That's right.
Let's talk about medical tourism, though. I haven't heard you talk a lot about this, but I look at this. I say, I go to Malaysia. I have tonsillitis. I go to the emergency room. They see me right away. I get pumped up with medications. I see an English-speaking doctor. I have a nurse follow me around. I take prescriptions home with me. It costs me $100 and some. And I say, here is much more of a free market system than the United States. What trends do you see? Because you are the great prognosticator, Gerald Celente. What trends do you see with people going overseas? Even maybe some of these governments saying, we're going to force you to go overseas for medical care to save some dough.
I've been writing about medical tourism since back to 2006. It was the top trends that we were writing about back then. And it's a trend. You're going to see more and more of it happen as the systems become so terrible over here, and particularly in a lot of the most of the states. And you're going to see people, particularly the baby boomers, that are strapped on cash, can't get good service, going to other countries. It's going to be a huge trend, and we don't see any end of it in sight. So on both the providing the services and getting the people there are going to be a lot of opportunities in it.
If you're advising someone who's young and they're saying, I want to go to school, I want to go to medical school, I want to rack up huge sums of debt or write a huge check if I'm lucky enough, and I want to become a physician, do you tell them, do you just slap them across the face and say, what are you thinking? Because there's not going to be a market for that?
Nah, because maybe they have a different passion for doing it. And, but I can tell you that the physicians that I know are not very happy in what they're doing anymore. And they're dropping out early rather than staying late. So, I'm old enough to remember when the doctor used to pay a visit to your house.
No more.
Well, so, it's their passion, if that's their passion and they believe in it, I wouldn't discourage them.
What, if someone were to invest, though, what is the opportunity that you see? Do you see medical tourism of all stripes? Do you see people saying, hey, I need a heart procedure, I'm going to go somewhere because I have to do that? Do you see a greater demand for cosmetic procedures? I mean, if you had to put your money somewhere, what would you pinpoint in the medical industry as a trend, as the biggest trend?
Well, I'd say like dental would be a real big one. And the cosmetic to an extent, that's not going to go. That's always going to be there and be a a big part of the society. But another one, like knee replacements, hip, that kind of thing. On the larger end of the more serious things. But dental is going to be a big one because a lot of this stuff isn't covered dental, and the older you get, the worse shape your teeth are in.
What is so fascinating, and we're speaking with Gerald Celente, TrendsJournal.com, is the United States and all these bankrupt Western countries, they have no idea about competition. It's funny. You go to these socialist countries, you have a problem with something. You try and get the government or whomever it is to fix the problem, and the answer is always, it's not my problem. There's no accountability, no responsibility, no sense of competition. Why bother? And yet you're mentioning, hip replacements, knee replacements. There's like a different country for every one of those procedures that's trying to be the best. India is one of the best for heart procedures, and they're trying to specialize on that. Other countries are trying to do dental, like the Philippines, Mexico, etc. These countries are tripping over each other to compete because they understand that's the real free market, but the U.S. doesn't get it.
No, the U.S. doesn't. It's lost here. Oh, the other one, of course, is going to be cancer treatments and alternatives. I mean, that's going to be huge because cancer is the biggest killer out there. So that's going to be a big market. But again, out from the mainstream way of doing it. Now, the United States is on the back burner of everything. I mean, we're not no longer the innovators. This is not the country of opportunity anymore. It's dead in the water. What's coming out of the States worth anything? So the system has been corrupted. It's been It's not corporate influence in this system. It is the corporations running the country. You see, I'm not a libertarian. I believe in laws. Just like there are red lights, and there were laws put in place in this country that gave the people an even shot. There was the Robinson-Patman Act, the Sherman Antitrust Act, the Clayton Antitrust Act, the Glass-Steagall Act. It prohibited the robber barons from robbing everything. And it's the same, so to me, that's why we lost that edge, because there's no longer competition. You get out of school, as I said, you mentioned about becoming a physician. That means you're going to have to work for some big conglomerate. You get out of school, what are you going to do, get a job with Walmart? How about Staples or Home Depot or Lowe's or CVS? The big pharma, the big drugstores. They used to be private drugstores. So to me, and then again the trade issue. They had trade barriers up in tariffs, so multinationals couldn't go to cheap labor countries, buy the products, and bring them back and sell them here. So to me, it has to be a restoration to see a future again of innovation. And so that's why I don't see it happening here.
Yeah, the one thing we do agree is innovation is dead in the United States. Like I said, we don't agree on everything. Gerald Celente is from the Trends Journal. I want to get to a few other things because I'm short on time, but let's come right back, and I want to finish up with some things. Gerald Celente, TrendsJournal.com on the Nomad Capitalist Report.